How's it going, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about Marvel and, of course, everything relating to the MCU. Today we're going to be talking about Robert Downey Jr. and all of the buzz around him returning to the MCU to reprise his role as Tony Stark / Iron Man. And then we'll talk about the X-Men in the MCU as well and how Iron Man and the X-Men could actually cameo in the same movie. Now, if you're unaware of the Robert Downey Jr. returning to Marvel situation, there have been many various reports by many different media outlets stating that Robert Downey Jr. has been talking with Marvel Studios about his return. And reportedly, his return comes down to two different conditions. One is money. Of course, always about the money. Robert Downey Jr. essentially hung up the role of Tony Stark / Iron Man in Avengers Endgame when Tony Stark died. He was done with the role, so you're gonna have to offer him a pretty good amount of money to return. And the second condition is that he wants to work with Tom Holland. The two of them obviously got close to one another. They worked together on Spider-Man Homecoming and of course in Captain America Civil War, Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Not to mention they both worked together in Doolittle. So this was the report. Robert Downey Jr. was considering returning to Marvel Studios to play the role of Iron Man once again. Important to note, not reviving the character Iron Man is dead. That is not going to be reversed. But as rumor has it, due to the failure of Doolittle, he has lowered his amount to come back to Marvel Studios, and apparently him and Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, have reached an agreement and Robert Downey Jr. will be coming back. Now, this isn't confirmed yet, although many people are reporting this. However, there are three very likely movies in which Robert Downey Jr. could return in that fit perfectly, and they're all in Phase 4. So let's talk about this and the X-Men. If you're new, be sure to subscribe with notifications turned on so you can stay up to date on all things relating to the MCU, and so you can enter my giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox One or a PS4. Now, there has been some rumors going around that Robert Downey Jr. could be returning as Iron Man in an Iron Heart series. However, we have heard absolutely nothing about an Iron Heart series being anywhere near pre-development at Marvel Studios. We haven't even heard anything as much as it being talked about. There are many Disney Plus series in development, and we pretty much know what they all are. Not to mention, Robert Downey Jr. probably wouldn't want to return for a series. It will most likely be a cameo for a short scene in one movie. And like I said, there are three very likely options in which these movies could be. And the first movie is Black Widow. Now, there have been reports and leaks stating that Robert Downey Jr. does make an appearance as Iron Man in the Black Widow film. It's unconfirmed, but this does fit perfectly. Black Widow takes place right after the events of Civil War, and even though Natasha is kind of on Tony's side in the beginning, she essentially betrays him, and therefore becomes a fugitive and then goes on the run. But Tony has a very long relationship with Natasha. They've been through a lot together, and just like in Captain America Civil War, Tony Stark offered to go get the Avengers first before Ross went looking for them. And this will most likely happen again after the events of Civil War. Tony Stark will say, "I will go get Natasha, I'll talk to her, I'll bring her in for you." Now, this would mean that a deal for Robert Downey Jr. to return as Iron Man to the MCU was made quite some time ago. It's only just now coming out. And we do have some leaked photos that are supposedly Tony Stark in the Black Widow film getting off of his private jet. Now, these are unverified, meaning that we don't know if it truly is for the Black Widow film, but it sure does seem like it, and some leaks have said that Robert Downey Jr. is in the movie, so we could be seeing Iron Man in Black Widow. And this works because it takes place before Avengers Endgame, so obviously he's not dead yet. Another perfect film for him to pop up in is Spider-Man 3. One of his conditions is again reportedly working with Tom Holland. Well, if that truly is one of the conditions on his return to the MCU, then he's definitely going to have to be in Spider-Man 3. And if we think about how he could return in Spider-Man 3, it fits perfectly as well. Perhaps Spider-Man Far From Home wasn't as revealing as we thought it was. After all, pretty much the whole thing took place in Europe. Tony Stark probably left Peter Parker a lot of stuff, and he most likely left him access to whatever labs that he had before the snap and whatever labs he built during the 5-year gap. Not to mention Happy is looking after him, and we know that he's going to be a major part of Stark Industries, as well as Pepper. Peter probably has access to basically anything that Tony Stark owned. Peter was like a son to him, and not to mention he's a genius, so What could happen is that we could see Tony Stark as some sort of AI, artificial intelligence, or we could see him as a hologram. A hologram would make sense. It would kind of be like the hologram that he left to Morgan and Pepper at the end of Avengers Endgame, except this one would be specifically for Peter. And in fact, it would make perfect sense that while he was trying to discover time travel, and once he did discover time travel, he realized that he was going to have to go back in time and realized that he might not make it back. That's why he recorded the message for Pepper and Morgan. And since Peter was like a son to him and he missed him very dearly, it's more than likely that he left a message for Peter as well. And the precedence for Peter to receive that message in Spider-Man 3 is set. Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, has already stated that Spider-Man 3 is going to be unlike the first two Spider-Man films, and he stated that Peter is going to really come into his character and he's going to be on his own. In Spider-Man Homecoming, he had Tony Stark. In Spider-Man Far From Home, he had Happy. Well, apparently in Spider-Man 3, since he is going to be on the run as a fugitive, he's not going to have anybody to help him. But we know at some point there is going to be a breaking point. Peter Parker is going to be in a lot of trouble and he's not going to know what to do. And this is where the message from Tony Stark would fit perfectly. Think of a message left to Peter from Tony Stark of him telling him that he's really proud of him, that he knows that he can accomplish anything that he puts his mind to, and that he knows he's going to go on to do great things and lead the Avengers. That's definitely the motivation that Peter Parker would need to kick himself in gear and take on whoever the villain is going to be in Spider-Man 3. And also, Tony did leave Peter glasses. Now the AI, Edith, stands for Even Dead, I'm the Hero. And the fact that he titled it Edith means that he was preparing in advance for his death and he planned to leave Peter those glasses. So a message from Tony to Peter makes total sense, and he could even show up as AI himself. And the last movie would not only bring Iron Man back to the MCU, but would have him show up in a movie where the X-Men could appear as well. And that is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, this won't exactly be the same version of Tony Stark that we know from the main Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline. But as we know, multiple new timelines have been created from the events of Avengers Endgame. And based off of everything that we know, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is going to deal with those alternate realities that were created. This is the perfect opportunity for a final cameo from Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. They simply bring him in the movie as an alternate version of himself. That way, his death isn't erased, but we still get our Iron Man cameo. And not to mention, it has been reported that the Illuminati could show up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, the Illuminati consist of 6 different heroes: Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Charles Xavier, Reed Richards, Namor the Submariner, and Iron Man. Now, Iron Man is the one who originally brought these characters together to form the Illuminati. And even though Iron Man is dead in our current timeline, that doesn't mean that Doctor Strange couldn't check with other Illuminatis that exist in alternate realities. It's there where we could see Tony Stark make his return. And, as I mentioned, another big part of the Illuminati is Charles Xavier. He represents the X-Men in the Illuminati. And we actually kind of have evidence to support the fact that Charles Xavier is coming to the MCU very soon, and the most likely film that he'll appear in first is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Recently, Patrick Stewart, who plays the original Professor Xavier from the original Fox X-Men films, revealed that he recently met with Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige to talk about Charles Xavier. And according to Patrick Stewart, Marvel does have plans for Professor X soon. In a recent interview, he said, "I met with Kevin Feige a couple of months ago and we had long conversations, and there have been moves and suggestions which include Charles Xavier." So we know that there are plans, or moves as Patrick Stewart says, for Charles Xavier to be in the MCU relatively soon. And we know that Patrick Stewart isn't going to return to play Professor X for another 10 years in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that means they were planning, or at least thinking of planning, to bring him back for a cameo. And where would a cameo make sense in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, the perfect way for this to fit in would be to have Patrick Stewart play Professor X, but from a different universe, an alternate reality created from Avengers Endgame. And in this universe, the Illuminati could exist, in which Professor X, Patrick Stewart's Professor X, could be a part of that Illuminati. And also Iron Man as well. Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. So, not only could Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness bring back Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, but it could be the film to introduce the X-Men. If Doctor Strange forms the Illuminati, Professor X is most likely going to be a part of that, just like in the comics. And it's very clear, based off of Kevin Feige mentioning the word mutants at San Diego Comic-Con of 2019, and the fact that Patrick Stewart revealed his meeting with Kevin Feige talking about Professor X in the MCU, it's very clear that the X-Men are on their way soon. So, what do you think about Robert Downey Jr. possibly returning to the MCU? Which film would you like him to be in? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe with notifications turned on so you can stay up to date on everything relating to the MCU. You can follow me on Twitter for live updates on things that are happening in the MCU. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.